Welcome to Consciously Cannabis. I'm Carly, host of Consciously Clueless, the podcast bringing you this series. Together with guests, I'll be exploring cannabis through lenses of sustainability, mindfulness, and plant-based living. Bonus content from Consciously Cannabis will be available at patreon.com/consciouslycarly. Take a hit, or don't, all are welcome here, and let's get lit. Thank you for being here. I am excited to chat more with not only about your life and your history with cannabis, but also the pretty amazing company you own that I've been digging into as well.
Thanks for digging into us. It's a journey. This is a trip that fell in my lap, and it's been a ride. You with cannabis, you just never know what tomorrow or today may hold.
So let's start there. What is your journey with getting into the cannabis industry?
My journey started. I've been around drugs all my life. My mother was a school teacher, and my father was a drug dealer. And my father was pretty known, pretty big guy in the streets. But my parents were not together because my grandfather knew the lifestyle that my father lived,
Mm.
and he didn't want that for me, my mom's father, but he wanted my dad part of my life. So I spent my time summers in New Jersey, and I grew up in North Carolina. So my father would wake up in the morning, smoke a joint, talk junk, and or it wasn't nothing for him to just roll up and have a conversation. But it made me a better person and a better man because he was always straight up with me about hard drugs, about cannabis. I was introduced to this 7, 8 years old. Um, and in terms of seeing it, and in terms of, I didn't smoke cannabis until my 21st birthday.
Oh, wow.
I was in college, and after playing football, body was hurting. And my cousin, we had an apartment, we had a birthday party there. And that's the first time at the time, they still call it, I smoked a blunt. And so I smoked for about 2.5 years, and I just gained a lot of weight from it. And so I just stopped cold turkey one day, and I haven't smoked since. And fast forward 2009, I was convicted for a white collar crime. And I spent 18 and a half months in FCI Morgantown. And lo and behold, that good buddy of mine also played college football with me, was in prison doing 8 years for cannabis.
Yeah.
And that's when it resurfaced in my life because I started to see other men that I was incarcerated with and for cannabis. And I couldn't believe the time that they were serving for a plant that some people say go back 2,000, some people say 4,000 years. And in retrospect, when you know science and you know your body is a cannabinoid system, you have CBD and THC in your body, you're a help nut. People are going to prison for it. It just didn't add up to me.
Right.
So when I moved back to DC, I was in North Carolina and came back to DC. Initiative 71 was the loophole to get in the cannabis business. And I came back here doing real estate status quo. And when COVID happened, I sat down and did a business plan. And I said I wanted to take the stitch and stigma off of cannabis. I wanted to make it luxury. And I referenced is that, it's like going in a Mercedes. When you go in a Honda dealership, you know what you're getting. You go in a Mercedes, you get it. We had a bunch of stores here in DC that was not up to par by my taste.
Mhm.
Um, so I wanted to put a luxury store that resembled Gucci or Louis Vuitton, Apple, or something of that nature. So I wrote a business plan, but I wanted to take a step further. I wanted to have a voice for the people, and I became and still am the chairman of the I-71 committee.
A little bit more about I-71 for listeners that might not know what that, like you said, the loophole.
So I-71 is DC gifts, and they passed a law in 2004 that you could gift. And gift is I purchased a pen or a painting and I give you the weed or give you cannabis. The committee, most of the stores, I-71 was DC, the Harris Rider, which negated DC from becoming recreational adult use. I-71 became that loophole.
Got it.
And in that loophole, there was a committee set up, which is called the I-71 Committee. It's basically an association for compliance stores, dispensaries. And before then, even before I became chairman, I was an advocate or lobbying DC Council on different things. They raids, shutting downs, things of that nature. So when they came to me and asked me to be chairman, I accepted. And it was shortly after my mother had passed. And I've been chairman now going on 2 years. But the work has been special and rewarding because we've seen laws passed to help a pathway to a license. We've seen things that we've done to continue to push policy and open up doors for people of color in return, citizens like myself. And so the work has been rewarding. So that's where I'm at today. I stand as the chairman. I'm also founder of Monco, which is a dispensary here in DC in the Mount Vernon Triangle area at 4th and K Northwest. And work is still meant. Now I'm trying to push adult use to remove the Harris Rider. So that's what I've been working on, along with growing my business, along with expanding my business, and along with cultivation and manufacturing. I am fully vertically integrated into this business from an advocacy standpoint, from a business owner standpoint. My job is never done.
You're doing such great work in so many different ways.
I appreciate that. It's just not me. This is not about me. This is about fighting for people who, when this committee started, they were behind the scenes. They didn't want to be seen. And I told them that we had to have a voice and we had to come from behind the shadows. This is for the people who have been incarcerated for 20 and 30 years for cannabis and other drugs. The war on drugs devastated the Black and Brown community, and people have not been served their justice or reciprocity, appropriations, whatever the word you want to use. And so I continue to try to fight that fight and have a voice of reason, but also have a voice of strength, because I think it's necessary that we have both. We have to listen and heed to see what's going on, but we have to have strength in numbers, and our voice has to be strong, that we're not going to just take no for an answer. And so the benefits behind that is that, yeah, I am a business owner. I do get rewarded, but the biggest reward is seeing people who for so long have had doors shut in their face,
Right.
that has knees on their neck, have been told no. And, I don't get into the black and white thing. I get into the right thing. And the thing I see most is we as people, when I say we, whether you black, Spanish, or anybody of color, that we have barriers and systematic racisms that are placed in our lives for monetary gain and personal wealth. So why can't we also get those monetary gains when it comes to cannabis and other things that we've suffered so much for? So the reciprocity or the appropriations behind this is to see a community of color that can create generational wealth, be
Mhm.
mid upper class people, that we can educate ourselves and that we can do things for our community and to aspire the youth in our community to do other things besides what society paints. And when they paint it with a wide brush,
Mhm.
what I fight for every day is to take that narrative. I have a kid. I went to prison. My kid, one of my son graduated from Yale. My
Dang.
daughter has a master's from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
You're changing that narrative as we speak.
Just because you, um, bad things happen to good people. And when society has ridiculed you, has put an assassination on your character, you have to continue to strive to prove people wrong. That's what motivates me being the underdog. But I also know that's what motivates people like me who served a lot more time than I did.
Mm,
And so right now I'm fighting for DC to have adult use. I'm fighting for people of color to have a say so in this space because less than 3% of this space is made up of people of color.
less than 3%.
Less than 3%. So the reality of the matter is that if you don't push the needle, you'll continue to get pushed out the way. And I've been blessed to have relationships here in the city and continue to build relationships and to try to pilot things for the future and for the younger adults who want to take this thing to the next level. Not here just in DC, but across the country, because I think that it takes everyone to stand. And cannabis is a village, just like raising a child. It's a new industry. It's a new baby that right now we are dictated by policy and legislators who have no idea. They've never been business owners. Some of them never smoked, so they don't even understand what the effects of cannabis and how it cues people, just not from where the flower can be used from anything from a tea to smoke to vape to an edible to a tincture. Like they have no idea.
Right.
They don't know the holistic side of it, so they definitely don't know the recreation side of it.
Right.
And as I fight, I also fight for that voice to be heard, but I also understand the political side of this and what's necessary from a standpoint of what is needed in this space. Got a lot of guys like, if you look at, we're in an election year. If you look at polls, you see why African American men between the ages of 35 and 55 are not going to vote for Joe Biden. Half of them have been to prison. They're just getting the right to vote. They blame him for locking them up.
Yeah.
There's no reciprocity there. There's never been, I'm sorry for the crack law.
It's just
So
been,
this
oops, okay, good. Now we're good, right? Everyone's
Right.
good?
Well, we're
Good?
we're going to introduce the George Floyd,
Right.
and if that doesn't pass, I've done no, it
I tried.
doesn't work. I tried. It doesn't work. There's never been I'm sorry.
Right.
There's never been let's start over. I'm Joe Biden. I'm sorry what happened.
Right.
We were wrong for doing this
Right.
because what happened is that you destroyed people's life because of a law. And I understand the severity of crack. I understand the violence. But I also think that things could have been thought out a better way. And I'm just not blaming him.
It's decades of bullshit, right?
It's decades of bullshit. And the Black Caucus, other senators, everybody was involved.
Yep.
Everybody had a say to go along to get along.
Mm,
And if you knew the premise behind the bill was set up to actually help you from domestic violence,
mm,
but it turned into the war on drugs. You can have this domestic violence, but we also need you to do this. So
right.
next thing you know, there was 101 crack the cocaine law that came out. And when people of color, mainly black people that look like me, were getting locked up from crack, they were getting these guidelines were a lot stronger.
Mhm.
You tore the black family up. It took us just basically another part of enslavement, Jim Crow, and all over again. So the reality of the matter is that when that happened and destroying lives, these same guys are now out trying to get social equity license, trying to start their lives back over, trying to generate some wealth, and they're
For the
not
same thing that I went to prison
in prison
for.
for that I got to beg
And I got to show why I deserve to be here now, even though I served time for the same thing.
for the same exact thing. Or I did crack and I sold weed, but now I understand. I've educated
Right.
myself. I want to, I'm trying to start a program here in DC, an incubator program, and I've been talking about it for so long, and so now I'm trying to get some help behind it. But I would love to take 19-year-olds, 18, 19 years old, take them through an apprenticeship
Mm.
program, um, 2 years. If they have a record, expunge their record after 2 years, but some type of paid apprenticeship to take them on how to grow, how to work in a dispensary, how to own a business, everything that involves cannabis, and actually give them a job when they get out because it'll be a middle class paying job, 75, $80,000 a year with that. But it also will get them out the streets.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, so there's a lot of things here happening that can happen, but I think mostly all we have to get around rescheduling or decriminalizing cannabis as a country. Germany's doing it, Europe, other parts of Europe, Amsterdam, like all these countries are doing it. In America, what we got 37 states that are medical, what 28 or so, including the district, are consider themselves recreational or adult use.
Right.
So half the union is already doing it, and the other half is on its way.
Yeah.
But if you look to the east of us is Maryland in the district, right? Maryland did $700 million last year in cannabis sales. Has a
Damn.
population has a population of 4.4 million people. Small state, right? 700 million. DC saw 22 million people, visitors last year.
Oh,
22 million. So if we take half of that number, go down to 11 million, let's just say kids, people who don't smoke, half. If we take another half of that 11 million, that leaves us with 5.5 million. That's smoke. I took 14 and a half, 15 and a half out. 5.5 million people. DC has a population of roughly about 900,000 people. Let's take half of that. So we're basically looking at 6 million people. DC could basically have a $700-800 million a year cannabis industry.
wow. That's
In
no
the city,
joke. That's no joke.
no joke, in the city is 8.8 square miles.
It's like the opportunity is just sitting there. That's how it must feel for you that you're just, do you not see it?
I think they see it, but the problem is that, again, we have a Biden administration that could pass recreation, didn't. We
Yeah.
have a congressman from Eastern Maryland and Andy Harris that's put a rider because he said he didn't want Maryland tax dollars in the district. Maryland's a wrecked state now. What's your issue? The problem is there is he got his hand in the cookie jar somewhere. And the reality of the matter is that when we're talking about reciprocity, and we always are talking about free trade and free will with other countries and Mexico and Canada. We don't have it right here in our own country. We want to do free trade with Canada or Mexico, NATO, whatever it is, the North Atlantic Trade Agreement. We can't even do this in our own country.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of long-term legislators, and I live on Capitol Hill, that pretty much dictates our lives day in and day out. But they say, hey, we as Republicans, we're capitalists. Right,
So are Democrats.
right. Or we're Democrats and we're for social welfare and social benefit.
Are we? Are you?
That's the question you have to ask, right? So the reality of the matter is that in any state or any when we talk about social equity or diversion and inclusive anybody, when we talk about having being diverse, we talk about social equity. If there's no justice, you don't have those two things. Because in order for that to happen, you have to have some justice
Mhm.
or appropriations, right?
Mm.
Somebody has to write a check or give something or reciprocity, meaning that, hey, what am I going to get out of this? There's no inclusion if you don't have those things. And so the matter here is, how do we do this?
Right.
Well, we continue to fight, and it's just not a one person to fight. It's a tribal fight, and it's just not one state or one city. It's a country of people and leaders to continue to stress their voices, whether it's to local government, state government, or federal government, right?
Yeah.
We have to, it has to be a three-pronged thing because it has to go up the flagpole. That's one prong of it. The second thing is that we have to continue to do what's right, even when they do what's wrong. We have to stay in compliance. We have to educate people. But most of all is we can't take no for an answer. Because the day we start taking no for an answer is the day that we're going to lose.
Yeah.
And when we lose, it's just not one of us losing, it's all of us losing.
Because it's really convenient for people with power, for everyone who's trying to make it better to get tired.
Yeah. And what is needed is support, whether how big or small your voice is or the next voice is. It takes those voices to continue to be echoed because I don't know who may hear your show, Carly,
Yeah.
but if the right voice hears it or the right set of ears hears it, that could be what's needed.
To be the game changer, the thing, right? There's all
Right.
these, it's so cliche. I think getting older is just realizing that cliches and platitudes are basically real and,
I
and
mean,
there's something to them.
when you get older, you start to realize, and my grandmother said, you never let the right hand know what the left one gonna do. And but the cliche is like the rubber will hit the road.
Right.
When you'll start understanding that as you get wiser.
Mm.
And what is necessary is that you and I continue to have a voice in this space because cannabis is wellness. Cannabis is health.
Yes.
Cannabis is freedom,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Uh, Cannabis is something that so many people, from people who suffering with PTSD to MS to cancer to that young person who's 21 who's just trying to find himself,
Mhm.
that want to cope with reality. So they go through depression and anxiety and understanding. Or cannabis could just be the guys on the back porch
Mhm.
talking about life over a joint. So the matrix from cannabis is different from alcohol or any other drug
Yep.
because most people understand that cannabis will make you free. It'll allow you to escape. Where if you drink,
You're stuck.
you're stuck. I think that as we continue to move forward and onward, we have to take the stance of saying, number one, let's educate people on this plant. Let's teach them how to
Why I
use it.
started this series. As in Minnesota, it became legal last year. It's been a part of my life for a while. And I just was like, I got to talk to more people who know more about this stuff than me. So my listeners who maybe aren't hearing this yet, maybe it's that right set of ears. Maybe it breaks that stigma. Maybe it changes one person's mind. Maybe it makes someone.
I think that whether you're in the Midwest or the West Coast, Southwest, the Delta, the Bayou, um, the East Coast, whether you're in the Southeast or Northeast, Mid Atlantic, um, when it comes to cannabis, we all have one thing in common: the plant.
Yeah.
And that plant has never killed anybody.
Mm.
So our reality is that we have to understand that when I sit down with people, I'm here to learn, I'm here to teach. And I read some of your, and that was powerful. I'm a learner and a teacher. If you can learn, you can teach. If you can teach people others to learn.
Wow.
The That's the matrix or the reality of all matters, is that we have to start thinking about self and think about the broader picture. I don't smoke anymore. I don't do anything. I drink, socially here and there. But what I get high about is being able to share this with people, to continue this fight. That's what's self-satisfying to me. And I'm in the business, even when the numbers are not right. I have flower to the people as my advocacy, right? And in flower to the people, this is what I do. This is how I get high, because the people have to have a voice. And when people don't speak up, they need somebody to speak up for them. That was Vietnam, that was World War II, that
Now.
was right now. But if you go back and if you think about it, cannabis in the 30s, the only thing that the Civil War, the only thing that we had in common back even then was the hemp, the clothes. The North first was hemp. What happened? Lobbyists got in D.C. and they pushed him away. What did they replace it with? Plastic. And said that fast forward 30s and 40s, what happened? The Drug Act of 1940 said that white women were more inclined after smoking cannabis to sleep with black men, so they made it a felon,
Heaven for fucking bid.
because and that they no proof,
Yep.
but that's how it all started.
Mhm.
Fast forward the 60s, Martin Luther King, the Voting Act, 65, John F. Kennedy died, riots, 1970, Nixon or Ford, one of them, passed the law, made cannabis Schedule 1 because of the riots, right?
Yep.
Cannabis has been a Schedule 1 drug since 1970.
Unreal.
54 years later, right? 54 years later, cannabis has been a Schedule 1 drug. Now, most people are saying, why are you talking about this? Most people don't know what a Schedule 1 drug is.
You just took the words right out of my brain.
So if you look at it, cannabis is a Schedule 1 drug, but cocaine is Schedule 2.
Hmm.
Cannabis is with methamphetamine and heroin.
Yep.
In any other type of prescription drugs or psychotic drugs that do not have any medical use. That's what a Schedule 1 drug is. Look it up. But cocaine Schedule 2.
It's information I know, but every time I hear it, I'm like, this is insane. It can't be real.
The reality of the matter is that you got to go back to the history.
Right?
What happened for cannabis to be a Schedule 1 drugs? Black people burnt down D.C., Watts, Philly, New York, Harlem, and they said this is a way to incarcerate them. Mass incarceration.
Hmm. Jim
It-
Crow.
Jim Crow all over again, not across in one section, the South, but across the country.
Across the country.
If you smoke a joint, you going to jail for 5 years.
And then all the money that's going to be spent on incarcerating these people for this drug.
Look at this too. Systematic racism is the judges, the parole officers, the wardens, the the correction officers, the POs, you name it, the
Yep.
police, everybody gets a piece of the pie
Yep.
because of fines and infringements that they put on criminals. But though you tell the taxpayers to take their tax money and spend where? To house somebody for 15, 20, 30 years. It doesn't make sense.
No.
That's what it comes down to. And I can tell you one who's been incarcerated who had means. There's a lot of people in prison don't have nobody to write them.
Yeah.
They have to work getting $15, $20 a month unless, there's some other programs there that pays them more. But it's hard for them to even survive or cope. And then when they come home, they don't have a support system.
And because of the systematic injustice that still happens after that, how are you getting a job? How are you getting a housing with a record?
I can speak to that.
Right.
I came home, I lost, the government took majority of everything. So I said, hey, I'll go back to North Carolina. I was living here in D.C. All my family's in, my mom was there at the time before she passed, my aunt's cousins, relatives, right? I'll go home. I work with my family owns a funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
I worked there for nothing,
Right.
just to have the job. I went back to living at home at 39, almost 40 years old. I left home when I was 18. Right, college, moved after, moved to DC after college, graduated, whatever the case may be. So now you start back over.
Mm-hmm.
I was afforded a job because me and this guy still best friends. He hired me because he had went to prison, and he saw something in me that he had inside of him, and we both had that in common. He gave me the opportunity to sell cars
Mm-hmm.
so that I could make a living. And he knew I was on probation for 5 years. And he did everything in his power, even to this day, we are best friends, to make sure I didn't mess up. Now, I was afforded those opportunities. A lot of people come home, don't have those opportunities. They don't, you got to remember, poverty, especially in the South, is different.
Yes.
And when people are impoverished, they do things that they don't want to do, but have to for survival.
Yes.
And once you get a felon on your chest, this is the other underdog thing with me. Your mind is different
Mm.
because I qualify for a lot of jobs. Do you know how many times I got told no
Because of your felony.
because of my felony? Because do you know when I went to get an apartment that I had to have my sister put the apartment in her name because the state of North Carolina says if you have a felon and you can't get an apartment.
And where the hell are you supposed to live?
Thank
What are you supposed to do?
you. Exactly. So if I didn't have those means, I could be one that racism level or that number they talk about, that so many percentage of people, especially among African American men, go back. I could have been one of those guys. But I'll take it a step further. I left North Carolina and came back to DC and went to Texas. I got profiled so many times that I wanted to come back north. And when you have people who they swear and they hold a Bible to protect and serve. They swear to an oath when they become a sheriff, police officer, whatever the case may be. and they ride behind you 12 and 15 miles and decide to pull you in another county that they have no jurisdiction over and lie about it. I got in a car accident one day, not even an accident. I lived in my apartment, came out one morning. I had a GMC Yukon truck. Somebody backed into my truck. The police officer, the first thing he says, "Oh, you need to call your probation officer."
Oh,
What's your name?
that ain't got nothing to do with nothing.
I said, what does that got to do with somebody hitting my car? You have, you know, you have to. I said, I what does that got to do? I know I got 24 hours to report to my PO about this, and I got a federal PO. He understands. So those are just things that people go through. I went through them. And so this is brings my story full circle. That's why I fight right now.
Right.
My friend Matt, who locked up with me and he's out now doing well for cannabis, I fight for people like him. For another friend whose son got caught with a joint not too so couple few years back, I fight for him because his son almost didn't get a chance to go to college because of a joint. And so the reality of the matter is this is what we have to fight for. Wealth is one thing, but reality is another thing. Principles is another thing. We got to continue to fight until some of these laws change, till we get these 6-term and 7-term senators and congressmen out of office, because that's the only way that we're ever going to shake this thing up. And being on shows and you having a voice and me having a voice, and we're able to explain and teach people and give them the the nuggets that they need in order to go out and do the same things that you and I are doing. That's the only way this is going to change.
I really appreciate that because not only for myself, but of course for listeners, but it's something I've been thinking about more and more. And this idea of fighting and moving forward and not giving up, and also finding some joy along the way. And I appreciate talking to you because your passion is palpable. And I can also tell that you enjoy it.
Look, God gave me this. I didn't ask for this. And it brings, my mom was a trailblazer.
Mm.
And she always told me, son, anything worth having is worth fighting for. And when you're a kid, you don't understand that. My mother taught for 34 years.
Damn.
And when she passed, she had about 600 people at her funeral during COVID. Yeah, my mom taught 34 years, but the work she did in the community, getting people out to vote, working, she loved her Democrat Party. She loved being on, getting people, officials elected. But she fought for our community to make sure that the streets and the ditches and everything, because down south, they still got ditches, were clean, and that the roads were paved, and that this was done, that the neighborhood didn't go down and that, right? And I remember her telling me one day, I'll die before I give up.
Oh,
And I didn't understand that until she died, because the same highway in front of my house that I grew up in, she contacted it, not only the Secretary of Transportation in North Carolina, she called Roy Cooper himself, who's the governor, and said, My road ain't paved yet. What's going on? So she fought,
Yeah.
and I always called her a trailblazer because I saw her work 2 or 3 jobs for my sister and myself so that we were afforded things in life. Now, fast forward today, I take that same spirit, that same woman, that same pride, and that same passion that you spoke about, that determination to fight for a segment of people who have always been blocked. And no matter what your story is, whether you came from upper class or poverty, we're all one people when it comes to that plant.
Yes. Yes.
Because that plant, whether it yields, whether you breed it high end, or whether you got Reggie, it's going to smoke the same way.
It's unifying.
The reality of the matter is that this mission is different. And I don't know what God has in store, but I pray that we're able to tear some boundaries down, that we're able to reclass cannabis. We're able to reschedule it, as they say, the correct saying, so that people can get the opportunities. But I don't want to just take it there. I want to take it where we deschedule cannabis, that we expunge records, that we let people who've been incarcerated go.
And support them afterwards and not
And
just
give
say,
them,
oh, it's good now. I'm sure
right,
they'll be fine.
exactly, and that we give them the support that they need coming out to get back into society.
Yeah.
And that is my mission, my goal. Goal was created to take the stitch and stigma and to make cannabis luxury. I think that we have a long ways to go,
Yeah.
but voices like yours continue to do your work, continue to galvanize young people and to educate them, continue to be a teacher, a place of resource so that they can learn and that we continue to fight this fight because that's what's needed. And if you don't do that, if you continue to build your platform, I guarantee you that's what a reward is
Mm.
because the reward is seeing others that you galvanize go out and do the same thing. And that's what it comes down to.
In my eyes, I just want you to hear loud and clear that you are a trailblazer to me.
I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate that. This has been a very rewarding conversation, and I appreciate you for being a trailblazer yourself.
Thank you, Terrence.
Like I said, continue to galvanize and continue to uplift people in understanding what wellness means, what this plant means to healing, not only the body from a medical standpoint, from a mental standpoint.
Yes.
And never always remember that there is others out there that you can always call because this is not an easy fight.
Mm.
It's very frustrating at times when you continue to see legislation get denied that you know should be passed. It's frustrating. And for your listeners out there, if you are in Maryland or the DMV area or anywhere, reach out to your congressman, your senators, and fight for DC. You know, I'm not asking you to come to Monco. You're welcome to come to
Although I
Monco.
really want to
Yes. I'm at 444 K Street Northwest here in
someday.
Washington. But again, guys, this is not about me. This is about making the right conscious effort, not only in DC, but across the country. So cannabis can be, why should we call it recreational adult? We don't do it for alcohol. So cannabis can be free.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you highlighting the importance of using your voice and pushing our politicians and using that voice to share and reach out.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Terrence. Is there anything else you want to share with listeners before?
I just want listeners to understand that, hey, we need each and every one of you to continue to fight the fight,
Yeah.
and listening to Carly, she's a young mind who's grown her platform. Keep listening to her. She's a brilliant young lady here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to an episode of Consciously Cannabis. If you're not ready for this episode to be over, don't worry. Every Consciously Cannabis episode has bonus content. Sometimes guests and I will smoke together. Maybe you'll see some of my friends and I toke up. Who knows? Go to patreon.com/consciouslycarly and get all the bonus content. And thank you so much for listening to this new series. If you enjoyed it, remember to hit subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Share it with a friend. Tell someone you know. Anything helps, and I so appreciate it. See you next time.